Jordan Peterson sat down with Destiny and they talked all of the culture war issues, all the things that are dividing people. And it was a good conversation. There was a nice back and forth, challenging each other. But when the topic of the climate catastrophe, the looming climate apocalypse came up, Jordan Peterson backed Destiny into a corner and he was not able to get out.
We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. Almost all the terrestrial temperature detection sites were first put outside urban areas. And then then you have to correct for the movement of the urban areas. And then you introduce an error parameter that's larger than the purported increase in temperature that you're planning to measure. This isn't data. This is guess. And there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it.
So Jordan definitely gets really, really triggered here. Yeah, it's a fun conversation to see him really push back. And then Destiny push back. So what are they talking about here? Okay, so you guys have heard the reports, 2030, the Earth is going to be unchangeable from all the damage we've done to the environment. Jordan's pushing back on, is the data accurate? But they get into something more pragmatic than just if the data is accurate. Because I think, believe it or not, I'm one of those people that I think that climate change is real and it's probably influenced by people, okay? Post-industrial revolution. I'm not one of those guys that denies that the Earth is getting warmer, nor do I think it's necessary to deny the Earth is or isn't getting warmer. I think what he gets into next is substantially more important than whether or not the oceans are rising or whatever, right? Go ahead.
Of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several hundred million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before. And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future or even an anti-dystopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations. It wasn't immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner. I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is. I watched over the course of the last 5 years, the estimates of the...
So WEF, World Economic Forum, you will own nothing and you like it, all this stuff towards climate justice and climate activism. So that is the context of what they're discussing here, right? Because the climate stuff kind of can get into its own religion. They got their own apocalyptic claims about the year 2030, and it just gets really weird. And listen, I'll be honest, I'm glad I don't own any beachfront real estate.
Yeah, man. In Encinitas, they're putting more sand at Moonlight Beach. So it's like I was just there and I was looking at it, and they're trying to get back some of the beach.
Yeah.
Which is nuts because it's coming up and it's hitting the cliffs and it's going to start taking out the houses.
Yeah, scary stuff.
I still don't believe it's real, though.
Number of people who were in serious danger of food privation rise from about 100 million to about 350 million. That's a major price to pay for a little bit of, what would you say, for progress on the climate front that's so narrow it can't even be measured.
I don't think the increase in hungry people on the planet is because of climate policies.
Why not?
Because I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I mean, most developing
Of course they are. They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities. But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity.
He is cooking. So what's going on here? Okay. Let me really try to simplify this. Okay, so what's happening is the issue we're running into is when we start talking about environmental justice and climate justice, the issue we're running into is America as a whole lets off about 15% of the world's carbon emissions. Okay, that means that it doesn't matter how many electric cars Joe Biden wants you and I to have. And I owned a Prius since 2016. I have a Tesla now. I have solar and I have a Tesla battery. I have zero issue with the pragmatic side of using and harvesting energy on your own. However, this notion that that if all of us got solar batteries and solar panels and cars, that it would even slightly move the needles to what's happening globally is just completely nonsensical. And what's happening is the majority of the quote-unquote dirty CO2 and all that stuff is being discharged not by America and Canada and Europe. It's being discharged by developing countries that are getting energy through burning fossil fuels and pulling hundreds and millions of people out of poverty. This is happening in India. This has happened in China. The industrialization of the world pulls people out of poverty. When you pull people out of poverty, it's been coming at the expense of fossil fuels. And he's saying that right now, and I learned this, that there's over $12 trillion of fossil fuels and natural gas spread across the continent of Africa, $12 trillion, and they're not able to get the resources to drill and get that out because of some of these goofy environmental policies that they want to do away with fossil fuels, without understanding that when you do away with fossil fuels, you're preventing a lot of people from eating. And I'm not talking about getting rich eating. I'm talking about poor people getting food in their bellies. Right? That's the dilemma that we're running into. John 5:24, Jesus says, "Those who believe my message and believe in God who sent me will have eternal life. They will never be condemned for their sins because they have already passed from death to life." And that is the exact theme of our latest collection, the Death to Life collection, available now through Sunday. So get yours now before it's gone forever over at blessgod.shop. I'll see you over there. Peace.
I would hate to be on the other side of a debate with not just a regular emotional person, but a Jordan Peterson who's a high intellectual and also getting turned up about it. You know, because usually when you're watching a debate, you're like, oh, the person that gets angry first is the first one to lose.
Yep.
But now you're like, oh, I didn't know he was going to come with the energy and the facts.
Yeah, that's a fact. Go ahead.
And that's direct policy from the UN, fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And then
Pause.
one more.
So this is the part that's uncomfortable as a Tesla owner, as someone that owns solar panels. The idea that renewables are better for the environment than fossil fuels is highly questionable.
Oof.
The work to mine the materials to build the batteries, to build the solar panels is potentially, I'm not saying this with certainty, just as bad, if not worse, on the environment in the short term. As a Tesla owner with solar panels on my wall and Tesla batteries.
So the pull to the renewable energy is actually just the speculation that it will be better for the environment in the future. It's not necessarily that they have a way to mass produce these things that are better for the environment. It's just speculation.
In the short term, it may even be worse.
Oof.
In the same way, the stuff that's mining our iPhone batteries is very, very questionable. Right? Yeah, lithium mining is horrible for the planet. Absolutely.
There's one more weird thing underneath all of this.
Okay.
Well, let's say if carbon dioxide was actually your bugbear and it was genuine. Well, then why wouldn't the Greens, for example, in Africa, the progressives, be agitating to expand the use of nuclear energy? Especially because Germany has to import it anyways, especially because France has demonstrated that it's possible. We could drive down the cost of energy with low-cost nuclear, and there'd be no carbon production. And then the poor people would have something to eat because they'd have enough energy. And that isn't what's happening. And that's one of the things that makes me extremely skeptical of the entire narrative. It's like two things. The left will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. And the left
will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. That is some weirdo dystopian.
That really is.
Sheesh.
will deindustrialize even at the nuclear level, despite the fact that it devastates the poor. And that's even worse, because if you devastate the poor and you force them into a short-term orientation, in any given country where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals and they will destroy the ecosphere. And so even by the standards of the people who are pushing the carbon dioxide externality control, all the consequences of that doctrine appear to me to be devastating even by their own measurement principles. We're trying to fix the environment. Well, boys and girls, doesn't look like it's working. All you've managed to do is make energy 5 times as expensive and more polluting.
That's right.
You were wrong. That didn't work. And so, and I can't understand. You can help me. That's why you're here today talking to me. I can't understand how the left can support this.
Just one quick thing. Let's say that everything you've said is true. What do you think is the plan then? What is the goal? What is the drive? Like, why push obviously horrible ideas for the planet and the poor?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, because you're positing it, right? So what do you think is the driver goal?
Well, I listen to what people say. Here's the most terrible thing they say. There are too many people on the planet.
What do you think is the drive for what you're proposing are bad policies? Well, Destiny, the same people saying and proposing all these awful policies that are preventing people from being industrialized and nations being more developed, those same people, oddly enough, keep talking about overpopulation. So, I don't know. That seems rather sus. So maybe they're incompetent and stupid, or maybe they really believe overpopulation is a thing.
So Destiny's saying, steel man the position. And Jordan Peterson's like, I don't have to. Their reason is even stupider than the thing they're trying to pass.
Right.
Okay, so who says that? I've heard people say that for 30 years. Perfectly ordinary, compassionate people. Well, there's too many people on the planet. And I think, well, for me, that's like hearing Satan himself take possession of their spine and move their mouth. It's like, okay, who are the...
It's like Satan himself taking possession of their spine and moving their mouth.
This man is a poet.
I love it. Shout out Jordan Peterson, man. One time for Dr. Peterson. We just got to stop and just acknowledge.
Let him cook.
How he's cooking right now.
That's got to make it into a verse
Go
on
ahead.
one of your songs.
Yes.
these excess people that you're so concerned about, and exactly who has to go, and when, and why, and how, and who's going to make that decision. And even if you're not consciously aiming at that, you are the one who uttered the words. You're the ones who muttered the phrase. What makes you think that the thing that possessed you to make you utter that words isn't aiming at exactly what you just declared? And so that's a terrible vision. But when you look at what happens in genocidal societies, and they emerge with fair regularity, and usually with a utopian vision at hand, the consequence is the mass destruction of millions of people. So why should I assume that something horrible isn't lurking like that right now, especially given that we have pushed a few 100 million people back into absolute poverty when we were doing a pretty damn good job of getting rid of that? And I just don't understand what's happening in Germany or in the UK. Like, it's insane. Like, look, man, if they would have got rid of the nuclear plants and made energy 5 times as expensive, and the consequence would have been they weren't burning lignite coal as a backup, and their unit production of energy, of pollution per unit of energy had plummeted, you could say, well, look, we hurt a lot of poor people, but at least the air is cleaner. It's like, no, air's worse, and everyone's poorer. So, like,
Nope. Air's worse. Everyone's poorer.
Oh, man. I haven't found anyone who talks about climate justice and says all the buzzwords that I had a conversation with somebody recently and they said climate justice. And I was just like, well, just the basic, they don't know any of this stuff. Most people don't know any of this stuff. And the people that are on the left that know this stuff will tend to at least concede and go, yeah, we probably should be doing nuclear. Because nuclear is not the Simpsons nuclear power plant anymore. It's not right. So anyway, go ahead.
explain to me how the hell the left can be anti-nuclear.
Okay.
I don't understand it at all.
Gotcha. All right. This is something that I brought up earlier that is concerning to me. I feel like when people get political beliefs, I feel like what happens is, what we think happens, what we hope happen is you have some moral or philosophical underpinning. And then from there, you combine this with some epistemic understanding of the world. And then you combine these two things, you engage in some form of analysis. And your moral
it'd be
view,
nice if that was true.
Yeah, you start to apply like prescriptions. So maybe I'm religious, maybe I analyze society and I see that particular TV shows lead to premarital sex. So my societal prescription is we should ban these TV shows, right? Ideally, this is how you would imagine this process works. What I find happens, unfortunately, all too often is what people do is they join social groups. And then with those social groups, they inherit something that I call like a constellation of beliefs. And this constellation of beliefs, instead of rationally building on each of these, you basically get this like Jenga tower that is like floating over a table and every block is like supporting itself and no real part of the...
So what he's saying is like people become red-pilled, conservative, and then they take in all this stuff. And here's the thing, like I know a lot of people that have slowly came over to like, I don't know about if we should stop women's rights for reproductive control and autonomy.
Yeah.
Even though me and my family are pro-life, I don't know if we should make that the law of the land, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like I know Christians, right? Christian Chad just did the episode with Paula Morgan, and he said that, and he's like, I'm happy I voted for Biden. I know Christians, but I think when you pull on that thread and you challenge them and you actually place debates, the best of the best from the Christian perspective, the best from the pro-life perspective to the pro. I think all of those, I'm seeing more and more people like deconstruct their political ideologies in line of their faith, right? Like there was once upon a time where I said stuff like, yeah, like I'm pro-life and I would never tell anyone to do it, but like, why should we make it illegal? You know what I mean? And then like I actually sat and thought through it and said that's stupid. It's a bad argument. Same thing with Transformers' rights to play sports, biological born men to play in biologically born women's. Like I think he's it sounds like he's really hyper generalizing that people are so in tune with groupthink that their brains check out and like, all right, I guess I'm a conservative now. So like, I believe in the lizard people running the government and everything, right? And the Zionists really controlling everything. And like, I don't think people think that way. Like, I think there's maybe some people that have like mental illness that like will buy in and go all the way off the rails. But I think most people are reasonable and sensible, but they go through issue by issue. So anyway, I think this is a hasty generalization on his part, but go ahead.
Tower can be addressed because you pull out one piece, it all falls apart. So
Right.
people become like very stuck in all of this combined constellation stuff, and none of it is really given like any analysis, and you can't really push anybody from one way or another in terms of like reevaluating any of the beliefs that are part of this constellation. I wish I would have. If I were able to become,
That's fine.
I wish
That's
I would have.
right.
But I thought that was one of the best, most linear frameworks of why some of the environmental justice stuff is not helpful to most people. And it was good to see Jordan push Destiny on him. Maybe we'll probably do a part 2 and see if he pushes back and where this goes.
John 5:24, Jesus says, "Those who believe my message and believe in God who sent me will have eternal life. They will never be condemned for their sins because they have already passed from death to life." And that is the exact theme of our latest collection, the Death to Life collection, available now through Sunday. So get yours now before it's gone forever over at blessgod.shop. I'll see you over there. Peace.